Without further ado, Stormy Smith.
Take me just a second to get set up here. Well, as Brad said, I work for the Office of Long-Term Care, and I probably have talked to many of you over the phone regarding incident and accident reports. I'll cover a little bit about what I do, so it'll go into this program. So since 1994, I've reviewed all the incident and accident reports, do the initial review that come in from all the nursing homes. I do that every morning, and they're routed to other sections in the Office of Long-Term Care. Along with that, I do the second reading on all of the abuse investigation reports, and I'm on the committee that makes the findings against CNAs or other non-licensed people. But in reviewing all of the abuse reports, well, let me just say, in reviewing the abuse reports, I see things happen over and over and over again that are common threads. And most of the training I do on abuse, neglect, and misappropriation of property as it relates to federal regulations, state regulations, and the Adult Abuse Act is geared towards administrators, directors of nursing, new surveyors. I do it with the AIPP program, administrators in training, and like I said, directors of nursing, the training program for them. But in looking at the abuse reports, I see time and time again where CNAs lose their profession, not just their job, their profession, just because they lost it in a moment of frustration or because they don't know what abuse, neglect really is. So this program that I'm doing today is directed at CNAs and other line staff, as Brad said, to kind of really hit the nuts and bolts of what abuse, neglect, and misappropriation of property really is. Uh-oh. I'll find it in a minute. There we go. Nursing home resident abuse, neglect, and theft. Do you really know what it is? Being a CNA is challenging, difficult, and rewarding all at the same time. You're taking care of the frail elderly whose bones break easily, their skin tears, they can't get up and down without assistance, and most of them can't hold their bowels and bladder, and they have some form of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. This is also the frail elderly that at one time strong and healthy, just like you and I are, and they're the ones responsible for laying the foundation of this country. If you live long enough, you too will be the frail elderly and will be taken care of in a home or a nursing home. If you're one of the ones who is taken care of a nursing home, you will have what remains of your possessions placed on a bedside table, and all of a sudden a special piece of paper, picture, or candy bar becomes the most important thing in your life. The least little movement of your body hurts, your joints are stiff, your skin tears, and you want someone to be kind and gentle when they are helping you. You want to see smiles and a gentle voice, and you don't want anyone to treat you like a child. Anything other than a gentle voice may scare you to death because you are now at another person's mercy for the rest of your life. When individuals become CNAs and are first introduced to the nursing home environment, they think they know what resident abuse, neglect, and theft are, but do you really know what it is? When you enter the nursing home environment, your world changes, the law changes, the Adult Abuse Act, and it's personal. When you first become employed in the nursing home environment, your working world is going to change and the law changes. You now come under the Adult Abuse Act, and it's personal. During your orientation, you will be told about residents' rights, allegations of abuse, how to use care plans, along with documents for you to sign stating that you understand these. You will be told that the nursing home comes under state and federal regulations, and that violations of those regulations can cause your nursing home to be cited for deficiencies, Violating these could cause you to receive disciplinary action and you could lose your job. But violating the Adult Abuse Act, if found guilty, will place you on the registry where you may never be able to perform your job again as a CNA. If the violation is serious enough, you could be arrested by the local police and charged with a crime by the local prosecutor. No one wants this to happen to especially good CNAs who just lost it in a moment of exasperation and frustration. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about abuse, neglect, misappropriation of property, and how easy it is to commit these acts if you don't understand the Adult Abuse Act and the protections for the frail elderly. Most CNAs are disciplined people, or they wouldn't have the patience to take care of the frail elderly in nursing homes. However, the discipline one uses in the home with their children may spill over into the nursing home and may become abuse or neglect, which is against the law. Discipline in your own home may be a finding or a crime in the nursing home. If you don't let me clean you up, you won't get breakfast. Y'all may have heard somebody hear that. That's abuse. Hurry up and eat or I will send your tray back. That's abuse. The person is telling the resident that if you don't be still so I can get you cleaned, I am not going to let you have breakfast. First of all, this is a threat under the Adult Abuse Act. Why? Because it provokes fear and alarm. What would you think if you were the frail elderly and somebody told you that you were not going to get your breakfast, which is your favorite meal? I guarantee you, you'd be alarmed and fearful. The statement could be neglect. Failing to provide necessary food is neglect under the Adult Abuse Act. The statements above, if proven after due process, could place you on the registry for abuse, neglect, or both, where you would not be able to work in a nursing home again. The second statement can also be abuse and neglect. The resident is slow, stroke victim, and doing the best they can. They can't hurry. The CNA is threatening the resident by telling the resident to hurry up or she will take their tray back. That is abuse. It's also neglect if you actually do it. Now, when I'm going along, if y'all have any questions, just raise your hand. Continued, if you punch that call button again, I'm going to take it away from you. If you don't get off the pot, I'm going to let you sit there all day. The Office of Long-Term Care receives reports of call button threats frequently. Telling a resident that you will take their call away provokes fear and alarm. And if you carry it out, it's involuntary seclusion. If you do it, it's abuse and neglect. You deprive the resident of goods and services and supervision under the Adult Abuse Act. Remember, all of this is personal. Action will be taken against the CNA, you, not the facility. Telling a resident that you are going to leave them on the pot is abuse. It provokes fear and alarm and is neglect. If you do it, you left them in a position where they can get hurt. It is lack of supervision under the Adult Abuse Act. If you do leave the resident on the toilet by themselves, you have to make sure that leaving them unsupervised in the bathroom is in their personal plan of care. You must always know what is in the individual's plan of care. If you go to Ms. X's room again, I'm going to have to whip your butt. Well, how many times have we said that to our kids? Now, don't get off the edge of the bed until I get back with some help. In this slide, you're telling the resident something that you might say to your kids. You can't say it to a resident. It is a threat, and it is abuse under the Adult Abuse Act. Also in this slide, you are leaving the resident in a dangerous position. You can't leave the resident in a dangerous position unsupervised, or it is neglect. Even if the resident didn't fall off of the bed It is still neglect under the Adult Abuse Act. You knew the resident had to be supervised. And yes, that's a finding if proven. It may not be the diet you're supposed to get, but it's food, so eat it anyway. Ms. X, I'm supposed to have 2 people to lift you, but I don't have time for that. You will just have to help more. Continuing with neglect, if you give a resident their tray and you know it is the wrong diet, it is neglect. It's failure to carry out a prescribed treatment plan in the Adult Abuse Act. If you give a resident slices of roast beef and you know the diet calls for ground meat or pureed, the resident could choke and die. And in fact, long-term care has received reports of just this exact same thing happening on several occasions. Long-term care received reports of residents' broken bones from improper lifting, not following the care plan, several times a week. If you lift a person by yourself and the care plan calls for a 2-person lift, it is neglect. And it's also neglect where the resident got injured or not. It doesn't make any difference if they don't get injured. If the 2 CNAs lift a resident and the care plan calls for a mechanical lift and the 2 CNAs do it, then it is neglect if they do it without the mechanical lift, whether the resident was injured or not. You must know what is in the resident's care plan. In fact, we just reviewed a case like this. Mr. X, I'm going to take a couple of your cigarettes and I will pay them back tomorrow. That's theft. Ms. X, you have a whole 6-pack of sodas and I need one really bad. I'm going to borrow one and I will pay you back later. That's also theft. Mr. X, I took your radio home over the weekend and brought it back today. I knew you wouldn't mind. That's theft. In dealing with theft, you're going to find it hard to believe that what is on this slide is a crime, but it is. Here are some of the terms used in the Adult Abuse Act to describe the examples in this slide. Deliberate misplacement or wrongful, temporary, or permanent use of a long-term care facility resident's belongings or money. Remember, this is the resident's home. If you take a couple of cigarettes from a resident, even if you pay the resident back, it is the temporary or permanent use of their belongings. It's theft. Yes, you could have a finding against you and be placed on the registry for taking a resident's cigarettes. That's how serious it is. You can't take their sodas, cigarettes, candy, or borrow money from them or anything including money. The law says belongings or money. You can't take their radio home over the weekend to listen to the ball game and then bring it back. It is still theft. One of the biggest misuses of residents' property is cell phones. Long-term care receives reports of cell phones quite frequently. Using a resident's cell phone is theft and the calls are traceable. People are almost always called. You can be placed on the registry for the use of a resident's cell phone. It is theft and the resident is charged with a call, and it is the temporary misuse of the resident's belongings. The examples are just a few of many ways you can get yourself in trouble if you don't understand what abuse, neglect, and misappropriation of property is. Every one of these examples, if proven, can be a finding placing you on the registry, or it may be a crime that you can be charged with. In a split second, lapse of judgment, not thinking, verbally reacting, you can lose your occupation and be placed on the registry, turning your world upside down. oops, went too far. Has anybody got any questions so far? The next part is put yourself on guard and don't react. Sexual slurs or requests by a resident or racial slurs by a resident. The Adult Abuse Act classifies all residents in long-term care facilities, your nursing home, as impaired. The residents are not responsible for their actions. Many of your residents have different forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. Regardless of what you think about a particular resident, they are legally not responsible for what they say or do to you. When you get out of your car and go to work, you need to put yourself on guard for anything a resident might physically say or do. Racial slurs can be hurtful and make you very angry, but don't retaliate. A sexual request by a resident can also make you angry, but don't retaliate. Remember, under the Adult Abuse Act, they are not responsible. If you react without thinking, there is a good chance you will retaliate to the point of violating the Adult Abuse Act, and you may be placed on the registry. If the retaliation is severe enough, such as terroristic threatening, you could be arrested. Again, putting yourself on guard for pinching or grabbing your breast or genitals by a resident, pinching, grabbing, or hitting you anywhere by a resident, spitting on you, throwing food at you, running over your foot with a wheelchair, or anything like this by a resident. Putting yourself on guard means preparing yourself mentally and physically so that you do not retaliate verbally or physically out of reflex. Some residents may grab your breast or your genitals. When you have been in a facility for a while, you know which residents are prone to do this. When you're new, you may not know. Just be ready and do not react. Some residents may pinch you or hit you unexpectedly. Be ready for it and don't react. A resident may spit on you or throw food at you. Just remember that under the Adult Abuse Act, they are not responsible for their actions. If you do anything physically back to a resident and say it was just reflex, you didn't mean it, it doesn't matter. It is still abuse. When the Maltreatment Committee at Long-Term Care reviews investigative reports sent in by the nursing home, they do not make judgments as to whether a slap is different from a pat or a spat or whatever you want to call it. It is all abuse. If it's proven that you did one of these, it will be up to you to explain before an administrative law judge if you appeal the finding against you. If it's proven that you committed abuse, you will be placed on the registry. You need to always remember that your nursing home is required to call the police when something like this happens. The police can arrest you and you can be charged with a crime under the Adult Abuse Act. All of the instances mentioned above are not only actions that can place you on the registry, but there are also actions that can have you arrested under the Adult Abuse Act. Like I say, if you hit, slap, pat, tap, or whatever you call it out of reflex, it's still abuse, and we get lots of these. And if it's proven, it'll place you on the registry. Had to have a sip, my throat's getting dry. When a resident has pushed your last button, back off, get your supervisor, let your supervisor know that you need to be reassigned or need some quiet time. When your last button has been pushed, what do? You back off. Immediately get your supervisor and get yourself out of the situation, as long as you can do it without putting the resident in danger. If you can't do that, just hold it until you can back off. Don't decide that you're going to win no matter what, because if you do, you will lose to the Adult Abuse Act. Go get your supervisor and tell them that you can't deal with this resident any longer. It may be temporary, it may be permanent. That's between you and your supervisor and your company policy. But for that moment, get out of the situation. It's human nature. When you work in a nursing home, you will have residents that you just love, and you will have others that you just can't work with. You still have to treat them with dignity and respect. We all have our limitations, but you can't show your limitations around nursing home residents. What, when, and who do you report abuse to? Any allegation, any witnessed event, suspicion or rumor, verbal, physical, or sexual abuse, neglect, or theft. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about what, when, and who you report abuse to. What do you report? You report any allegation of verbal, physical, or sexual abuse, neglect, and theft. The term any allegation gets a lot of nursing home employees and facilities into trouble. Any allegation means just that. If a resident that has Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia, and they tell you that someone came through their window and raped them, and you just left the room and you know it didn't happen, it is still an allegation and it is still a reportable event. If your resident's family member, visitor, or another employee makes an allegation, it is a reportable event. It must be reported immediately to the administrator or his or her designated representative. If you witness anyone, family member, visitor, staff member, or another resident, abusing or neglecting a resident, it is a reportable event, and it must be reported immediately. If you hear a rumor or you have reason to suspect that a resident may have been abused or neglected, it is a reportable event. Yes, even a rumor is a reportable event, and it must be reported immediately so that it can be investigated. Let's talk about when. Report any allegation, witnessed event, suspicion, or rumor of any form of abuse, neglect, or theft, or sexual abuse immediately. You report any allegation, witnessed event, suspicion immediately to the administrator or their designated representative. All reporting starts with a staff person who sees it, hears about it, or has reason to suspect it. It starts with you. Immediately means immediately, not an hour later, not when the administrator shows up or the DON for work the next day. Immediately means right then. Federal regulations require all allegations to be reported immediately to the administrator or their designated representative, who in turn have reporting obligations under state regulations, state law, and federal regulation. But it starts with you, the CNA. They can't do their job until you do yours. Let's get into who. The administrator's designated representative is determined by your nursing home's policies and procedures. Make sure you know who the designated representative for the administrator is for your shift. When the federal and state regulations say that you have to report immediately to the administrator or designated representative, the designated representative is determined by your nursing home's policies and procedures. The designated representative is usually described by position. It may be a particular wing, such as LPN or RN in charge of the East Wing. It will be different for each nursing home. It is your responsibility as a CNA to know who the designated representative is when the administrator is not around. When your nursing home is being surveyed under federal regulations, the state surveyors will ask employees on all shifts if they know what abuse, neglect, and misappropriation of property are, when to report it, and who to report it to. If you do not know the information we have covered in these slides when a surveyor asks you, your facility could receive a violation. If you have any questions about the information in this presentation, Make sure you ask your administrator. That is your responsibility as a CNA. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.